don't block the path of inquiry. Don't lay down rules that make it impossible for people to ask important questions.
Welcome to the Thought Stretchers podcast, where we hope to stretch your thinking about important issues in education through rich inquiry. My name is Drew Perkins, and I'm your host for these conversations for complexity and nuance. In this episode, I spoke with Songyee Yoon, who is the founder and managing partner of a venture capital firm called Principal Venture Partners. And she's also the author of a couple of books which are titled Push Play, Gaming for a Better World, and Mosaic of Minds, Navigating the Coexistence of Artificial Intelligence and Humanity. In this conversation, we talked about the ethics of AI in education and beyond, and some of the things that teachers and schools and really just humanity should be thinking about. I also asked her about some of the other questions on federal initiatives on AI in education and philosophical kinds of questions as well. Always interesting to get the perspective of someone from outside of education specifically. And I hope it's helpful as you think about the use of AI in education. Speaking of AI in education, if you're interested in learning more about our AI in education workshops, you can find that information at our website, which is wegrowteachers.com. We have a few AI in education related blogs and a couple of workshops, one which is titled AI Powered PBL, and the other is Transformative Teaching with Generative AI. Both of those are available, like I said, on our website, wegrowteachers.com. And if you go to school workshops and services in the menu, you will see AI and education workshops, and there you can find them. If you're listening to this in a timely manner, our PBL Grow 25 event, which is June 23rd through 25th, is nearing the end of regular registration pricing. So if you're interested in joining us to learn more about project-based learning and how to design and implement it in our home base of Louisville, Kentucky, you'll find that information on our website if you go to the very top and click through. As always, if you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is drew@thoughtstretchers.org. And now here's my conversation with Songyee. I am with Songyee Yoon, and she's joining me from the Bay Area of California, and we're going to talk about AI and her thinking on AI in education and work. But as I usually like to do, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and give listeners a little bit of background on who you are so that they know who they're listening to.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Songyee Yoon. I'm a managing partner of Principal Venture Partners. We invest in early stage AI data companies from Series C to Series B.
Okay. And I know you've got at least two books. Would you care to kind of talk a bit about those, at least the titles, but if not, a little bit more?
Sure. So I have recently published two books. One is titled Push Play, and the other is called Mosaic of Minds. The former is based on my experience running a gaming company as a president for 15 years. I learned that through the experience, it was a really fantastic time to see the rise of the digital entertainment, running an online gaming company internationally, spanning 7 different countries and different continents, and the role of gaming in the innovation ecosystem. Gaming tends to be a place where a lot of the new ideas and innovation is first applied before it makes its way to other industries, because first of all, it's a kind of a low risk environment. Unlike, for example, if you come up with a new AI algorithms, you apply to driverless cars, what's at stake is human life, whereas in gaming, worst that can happen is a client crash. And also the audience, the players themselves are early adopters. They would like to see game companies try out new things and incorporate new innovation and dare to push the envelope, because that's where they really find the fun and engaging experience. So that's what's needed. And I think that allows the gaming companies to try out new innovation, whether it's from like technologies like AI, cloud, infrastructure, as well as the new monetization like freemium models and free to play and etc., which is common today in many industries. But it first started in gaming, and when it was first introduced, it's a novel concept. So you can see that has been a really interesting experience. And my book Push Play is about the role of the gaming industry plays in this innovation ecosystem and what kind of lessons that we can and draw from that. The
Hmm.
other book is called Mosaic of Minds. I've been like doing this AI for decades, and I think it's a somewhat foreseeable the kind of transformative power of this technology and how it can lead to some kind of unintended consequences, such as exacerbated kind of inequality and displacement of some of the workers if you're not careful. So I talk about a lot about responsible technology development and the role of different stakeholders in the society to make sure that what this powerful technology bring to the society is a progression of humanity, not the other way around.
Hmm. I'm sure we'll get at least into some of the latter book topics here. Before we get into the AI and network, I'm curious. I usually ask this of guests because I think it gives a little bit of context. Can you describe, or would you describe your sort of educational journey? I think I know you went to MIT, but prior to that, as a child, and sort of all of those kinds of things. And what was that like, and how would you describe and characterize that?
I mean, I think I was always interested in like science and technology from very young age. I remember that I when a lot of my friends set up dollhouse and like with all this furnitures and dolls in their bedroom, I set up a science lab filled with like flasks, and also like some of the chemicals and also the like microscope and etc. So when I was running back from school, I was like 8, 9 years old. I don't remember exactly when it was. I kind of fell and broke my knee and started bleeding, and I was really excited because I could home and could see the under my microscope. So like I could squeeze my blood and like put it on that and the like in a glass panel
Right.
and kind of observe that with a kind of extreme excitement. So I really enjoyed like I guess I was kind of a rather a nerdy girl from early age, and I majored electrical engineering at college because I really wanted to learn how like small semiconductors and like transistors work and how assembling all of those things turn into this like a magical devices and wanted to be a good engineer. And one of the marquee subjects, if you major in electrical engineering, is signal processing, where you learn about compression and decompression of the signals. Um, and there I learned that the best algorithm is not necessarily the mathematically the most superior. It's an algorithm that was developed with how human brain and mind works in mind. So, for
Hmm.
example, the kind of compression algorithm that takes care of the frequencies that are sensitive to human eyes are oftentimes viewed as a more like a better algorithms and technology than just kind of use the optimization to minimize the like mathematical error. That led me to think that I just wanted to be a better engineer. So that led me think that I want to be a better engineer. I have to study how human brain works, how human mind works. And it was before all the university curriculum and application was available on the internet. So I had to go to a big library and went through books to find out where I can learn the both engineering disciplines as well as how the human brain works. And I found the program at MIT, and that made me to apply to study there for my graduate degree.
Hmm. Well, again, fascinating. And did you go to public or private sort of like K-12 kind of schools or
Yeah, it was all public
oh,
education.
okay. And would you characterize the teaching that you received as more traditional or a little bit more progressive, inquiry kind of centered or based, student centered, teacher led?
So my experience of being a in K to 12 school couldn't be more traditional. It was a very traditional
Okay.
um, uh, approach that I had to follow.
Okay. Well, that's helpful because, like I said, it gives a little, context to think about this. So we're here to talk about AI in education, and we do professional development and help schools with thinking about AI in education. But it's a pretty complex. There's lots of facets. So I'm wondering, one thing that we've seen come out and come down the pike is a federal, I guess, directive or executive order or whatever it is that's pushing for more AI in education. It's hard to tell these days what's happening, but um, how do you think about? I guess maybe what are some of the most important questions that you would think K-12 educators, especially, because I think that's most of the folks that pay attention to this podcast. What are some of the big questions or things that K-12 educators should really be thinking about in terms of using AI in education?
Sure. I think it's a really multifaceted
Mm-hmm.
question, and it can go to many different directions. And first of all, uh, we often have conversations about the future of work and future of the job and how the deployment of AI technology and adoption of it will change the landscape for our future workers. And it's hard to imagine that that all of those jobs in the future will somehow leverage AI because it's just powerful tool. And with that, I think it's very important for us to think about how we can educate our children to be well prepared for that type of environment and future. And in that world, one thing that's interesting is that the knowledge itself, memorization of it, is quickly becoming a commodity because I mean, like there is search engine, like everything is at your fingertip. You can look up that exact data and information. What's going to be very important in that environment is going to be problem solving skills, creativity, and orchestration, and managing all this AI agents, which is not just which requires different type of training and skill than memorizing that knowledge. But I think that our education system, especially public education system, has been evolved in like optimizing for delivering that knowledge, making sure that students get exposed to like large body of knowledge and process it. We haven't thought intentionally about how we can nurture and maximize their creativity and their problem solving potential in education. I think that's something that we need to think about and how we can incorporate that more so that students, when they finish that education journey, they get that exposure and have those skills that's going to be essential is fully developed.
Well, so you're speaking my language in lots of ways, and because I think we may have I may have said this before we started recording, but all the work that we do is through the lens of inquiry, and we talk about preparing students for the modern world. And I think kind of what you're saying is certainly at least one of the facets of that, right? So problem solving, being able to think critically, use inquiry skills, all of the things that are sort of accordant with that. But I'm also keenly aware of, and if anybody's a sort of science of learning, cognitive science advocate, and I'm quite sympathetic to the movement myself, they will hear you say what you said, and maybe their hackles might go up because what they will say, and I think the research shows, is that to think critically and do it well and deeply, we really need knowledge. So the danger, and I think this is very true. It's self-evident, is that if we have AI sort of doing the thinking for us, that we're not doing the thinking, and if we don't have that knowledge, if we don't have that sort of onboard, they would call it prior knowledge and background knowledge, that we're not going to be able to think critically to any real extent. I would argue you can think critically, but again, it's not going to be high quality critical thinking. So I don't know if you want to clarify, like, are you thinking that we want to move away from sort of memorization of knowledge and facts, or how do you think about that balance?
No, absolutely not. I fully agree with you that like we need base knowledge and understanding of the mechanics to be creative. I mean, like it doesn't come out of vacuum, right? I mean, and also creativity comes out of scarcity. But what I'm saying is that we have to be intentional that that also like it's in addition to like teaching the basic knowledge and how it work and everything, we need to be very intentional about like how we can nurture that executive function that's critical for creativity and problem solving, and how we can incorporate that into the curriculum.
Yeah, so I characterize that often as sort of a yes and, right? Not either or, but a yes and combining, the different kinds of pedagogical approaches. I, AI, again, can be used in so many different ways. I guess one of the big concerns that people have right now is that students are using it to you know, create things or write essays or basically cheating, right? How do you think about that sort of, I guess, threat, or maybe you wouldn't characterize it as a threat?
I mean, I think that's a very good question. I think I mean, these are the tools that our students are going to use in the future, right? And I think the availability of such tools that help you get draft something in the format that we're looking for. It doesn't. I don't think it's gonna replace the skill set that's needed. What it really does is kind of it really demands us to be a better critic of the work, right? So I mean, I think it's if I mean, yes, like everyone have access to this tools and they can come up with some kind of pretty decent draft. But to be really, I mean, I think the ability to tell like, oh, whether that's a well drafted, like kind of the writing that fits our purpose and fits the quality bar that we're looking for, you should be able to be a good critic with the eyes that can judge the quality of the work. If you cannot tell the difference of like different productions, then it'll be very challenging to work in like later on in the workforce where everyone is using that tool. So I think that's a kind of the bar that we have to apply to our students as we teach their like writing skills.
Yeah, so using it in some ways to as a sort of aid, but not making sure that we're not, I guess, overlooking the ability to sort of do it without AI, right? Like, I mean, when calculators first hit the schools, people were freaking out, and I think it's clear that we want students and people to be able to do basic math and multiplication without calculators, but we certainly want to be able to use that to, be more efficient in things like that. Um, in terms of ethics, though, what are there other concerns besides cheating that we should really be thinking about in your estimation, or how do you think about the issues of ethics, especially in terms of education?
I mean, I think there are a lot of things. I think what it's not just in a classroom. I think it's at the how the technology is developed, and I think that this type of transformative technology has the power to really exacerbate inequality and like kind of differentiated access to technology and opacity behind how this technology is trained and made lead to a lot of kind of uh, uneasiness to a lot of people. And I think it's this is a time where the like public-private collaboration is very much needed to make sure that this platform technology, the infrastructure, is there with the right level of integrity, and people who are building up on it has a kind of the assurance and trust that it was built with the best public interest in mind. And I think that I mean, there's a lot of the work that needs to be done by the researchers and like educators to really thoughtfully integrate into the society instead of like it doesn't mean that we have to be anti-technology, and I think it's we have to very much embrace it, but we need to have a good understanding of like what is extent of the harm that it can pose, and like what is the kind of the things that we don't know, and what is the best way to ensure what it's doing the best for our students. For example, like you mentioned, a very good example of like calculators, right? I mean, across the world, different countries have different policies. Like in some countries, calculators are not allowed up until like high school because they believe it's important for them to learn mental arithmetic, even if it's going to be important tool that they're going to use in the workplaces. But you have to be able to kind of triangulate and do the kind of a rough math, like a back of the envelope calculation, to be effective and make sure that there is a kind of catch the errors in a most efficient way. And likewise, I think it's even if you are going to be end up using a lot of the tools for like draft and generating these things, you want to have the skills instilled. But many countries have like different policy in terms of like, and I think some U.S. Some elementary schools and even in elementary school, they allow calculators in the classroom. I mean, I don't think there is a good study about like when is the best time to incorporate it and what is the kind of objective function in incorporating in our classrooms. And I think that's something that we have to look into, and what is the best about to come up with the right policy. So I think there are a lot of things that with just like any other new tools and new technology, there are a lot of questions that is being raised, and we have to be diligent in addressing those with a kind of evidence-based approach and apply it.
So you mentioned, we're talking about ethics, and you mentioned some of the potential harms. One of the things you mentioned was sort of around equity and access, I suppose. Are there other harms, or like what are the things that we should be, or that you are concerned about as potential quote unquote harms?
And also, I think there are a lot. I mean, I think it's a powerful technology that's very transformative, and I think it's access to the technology, and everyone has the opportunity to fully embrace and kind of learn what is the best use of this technology. It's going to be important to really lift them up, like to the similar playing field, and that's one thing. And also, this kind of understanding the limitation of technology is going to be important, because there is a thing called the machine bias, and if this technology says one thing, then we have to be cognizant it's just kind of saying things because of how it was trained, what type of data went into it to come up with this type of answers. But you just kind of blindly believe, oh, because the machine said so, it's going to lead people to believe in certain things, and that kind of puts us in a kind of a very dangerous situation as a society.
Right. So when I think about AI, and I think probably most people think about AI, they think about like ChatGPT and there's Google's Gemini, which I'm finding to be pretty interesting and maybe more useful than ChatGPT. Elon Musk's got Grok. Was it DeepSeek, whatever, from China, and there's probably some that I'm missing. Do you have I guess a sense of which of those are, I suppose, more ethically designed and uh, lacking, which ones might be lacking the sort of ethical problems that we might be seeing? I mean, we've seen certainly what they call hallucinations. It's interesting, if you ask it to quote certain people, they will come up with quotes, and then you ask it if that's an actual quote. They say, nope, sorry, it actually wasn't. You're like, wait a minute, how does this happen, right? And those are just anecdotes that are harmless in many ways, but there's got to be, I mean, we're talking about people using it for medical advice or, again, for education, and it could be giving incorrect information and that kind of thing. So I'm curious, is there a tool that you think is better or worse in those kinds of, I guess, avenues?
No, I mean, I think that's the reason why I mentioned it's important to understand how things are made and what is the limitations. And I think you have to learn to like not blindly believe the piece of technology tells you. And also, I mean, it's an evolving system. Like AI, by definition, is a learning. It learns from your preference, your interactions, and like your interest, and it's very adaptive. So you cannot just say that, oh, this is more ethical or less ethical as a product, because it kind of constantly evolves. But there is a system as a society and human intellect. We have developed a system of like so-called peer review, and I think that's a system that I mean it's not perfect, but it's the best we've been able to come up with through refinement and policy over the last like hundreds of years, to hold all of us to be accountable and intellectually honest. And if if it's a knowledge is something that has such a broad impact to our society, we should be able to put it under that type of peer review and transparent sharing of like how this sausage is being made, so that we understand, we consume it knowing what's going in there, what are the limitations, and also all of us as consumers should also have a kind of the ability to see it with a critical eyes and use it with a like kind of the clear boundaries and limitations. So I think that's a system approach that we need to adopt and incorporate this technology as integral fabric of how our society works.
So I suppose in many ways that's kind of what our university system is meant to be doing with knowledge and peer reviewed journals. But it seems pretty clear that there's been some corruption of that over past decade or two, and now we're seeing further corruption. It looks like from a governmental interference kind of perspective, and so. One question I have is there an organization that is sort of implementing that kind of a systems level approach? And whether there is or isn't, do you think the government should be a part of that kind of, I guess, peer review kind of system?
I mean, I think it's very unfortunate that universities lost that credibility, as you mentioned. But I think it has been the best in kind of doing that, leading our intellectual progress over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as long as our human history has been around.
Sure.
So instead of just kind of discounting it, I think we have to think about what led us to this place we are in, what kind of check and balance in the society, and how other parts of the society has been working and not working. Because I mean, I don't think it happened in isolation, and I think it's happened in like interaction and action reaction with other parts of the system.
Sure.
I think that's I think that's a kind of sobering call that we have to be uh, alert and think about what can be done to really preserve very important function that's needed for our intellectual progress. And I think it's a if the government is also, I think it's can play a very important role as a policymaker and a kind of the body that can put guardrail in this technology development with the right set of effort and knowledge and intention. And I think that's going to be a very valuable.
So is there an organization or outfit that is doing sort of serving that role at this point?
Not that I'm aware of, and
Mm.
I think it should be a concerted effort in collaboration. But I don't think there is such effort yet.
Yeah. I can imagine, a government and, certainly our current government and leadership. If you're talking about AI being essentially a factor of, at least in some way, and probably for a large part, what is input, right? There's the data that's input and what is and isn't input, that there's a real chance for manipulation there. Just like one might do with the press, or one might do with the universities, or that kind of thing. And so the control of knowledge, which kind of brings me back to one of the earlier questions, thinking about, sort of a more traditional approach versus something that's more inquiry approach. And I advocate for inquiry pretty heavily, with a recognition that knowledge is really important. But if we just only have knowledge and are accepting what knowledge is actually true, and maybe AI is telling us that and it's corrupted, then if we don't have those inquiry skills, those critical thinking skills, those problem solving skills to be able to be skeptical, to question, to check the empirical veracity of that, then that's a real problem, right?
Right. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. Do you have real concerns about AI being sentient and sort of ending us as it might be?
That's a very philosophical question. I mean, um, the inquiry about sentient is a century-long question, right? I mean, I think you remember the book called Frankenstein. It's about the journey of creating artificial life, and the mistake that was made in setting like kind of expectation mismatch between human and an artificial life, how it has to be treated and respected, and it led to quite a tragic ending. And I think it's a question whether we can create. I think someone say it's a God complex, whether we can create something that's like us or that's smarter than us, that can come after us, and how the world is going to change. And it's a pretty loaded question that's not only about like the evolution and development of a chatbot, but it involves a lot of other things about social order, how the physical embodiment works, how and like kind of like the materials that we are made of. I mean, it involves a lot of different parts of the question, and there are a lot of philosophers who wrote on this topic. So I'm not trying to not going to try to cover all of that here. But what I'm worried about is not the rise of this sentient that's going to come after humanity. What I'm worried about is the lack of responsibility and recklessness of those who has the access to this enormous power and technology. And I think the right kind of that the power and the influence comes with responsibility, and then that's something that hasn't changed as long as our human history goes. And I think those who are working in the field building this technology should have that mindset of the responsibility and caring for all the stakeholders.
Hmm. So you, at least part of the time when you're not writing books, work for a venture capitalist uh, organization, right? And partly, at least, invest in AI native companies. I'm curious what that looks like if if you've invested in and are seeing real value in AI in education related companies. Just as we were starting to talk, I got another email from some AI in education. They've got a new tool that's going to transform education, and the education is littered with all kinds of things. MOOCs were going to transform education, and all these kinds of things. So, what does that look like from your perspective?
So AI is not a magic wand. It's a tool, and it allows us to do things more efficiently, allows us to kind of solve problems that if we know what problem that we are trying to solve. Education is not, it's very complex. It's I think it's every student is different, every environment is different, every subject is different, and I know it's kind of it's almost it's a form of art how to raise a child to be a contributing, responsible adult for a society. So I'm all for incorporating technology, whether it's AI, whether it's any other platform into education to make it more effective and more relevant. But it should start with our education philosophy. What's the goal? Like, what are we trying to do here? What's our understanding of this subject matter, and how we can incorporate tool to achieve that goal more efficiently and more in a more scalable way to provide a quality education to more students.
Hmm. So I suppose there's ways you can think about using AI, and one of those is how students would use it. Another is how teachers would use it, and we've seen AI, writing lesson plans and using it that way. We do a lot of project-based learning work, and think about creating a project and doing all of the kind of scaffolding, and of course you would want to make sure you're checking for accuracy and that it's done well, not just accept what it is. But technology and education, as you mentioned, is something that it's actually getting a pretty close scrutiny now with phones in schools and screens in schools. And I guess I'm wondering if AI, they say, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is the at this point the use of AI among all of the other educational technology solutions and things that are in schools, some a little bit more old fashioned, of just Chromebooks and things like that. Funny to call Chromebooks old fashioned, but compared to these AI apps that can just generate all kinds of things, uh, is it worth the squeeze at this point? I mean, are you seeing in your work, and from your perspective, which is I would think a little bit outside of education, as far as I'm aware, are you seeing that the AI in education is as valuable as the sort of downsides that one might see from it?
So for me, like I have a broader definition of AI than you probably have. I mean, I think it's AI is not just chatbots. I think AI also is like a bunch of like software and algorithm, like personalization, all those things. I think it kind of fall in the realm of AI for me, and I'm all for incorporating all this software if it helps the teachers to be more effective, helps the scaling up the access to scale quality education to broader pool of students. It helps with like saving time for instructors, and I think those are the all things that's gonna be timeless. That's gonna be needed regardless. And I think there is a role that software can play to achieve those goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be using generative AI technology to come up with better polished, like personalized messages to the parents and students to instead of just writing each one by one. Then I think it saves tremendous time to teachers and kind of get the same message across. Then why not, right? But if it's just kind of blindly believing what the AI says and like takes the opportunity to learn that important skills such as critical uh, thinking and problem solving and like doing the research by themselves, then no, I think it's whether it's AI or other tools. If it deprive the students of that opportunity, then we should not use that tool in the classroom. So so like again, I think to me, what's important is what is the objective of education, how we can craft it, and how the technology can make all of us help all of us achieve that goal in a more frictionless way.
So, any thoughts on how we get our teachers prepared to do that? Because it doesn't seem to me that the teacher workforce, which has a lot of issues, I mean, we're talking about teacher shortages and quality of teachers and all those kinds of things, even without thinking about AI. Any thoughts on how we get our teachers to, I guess, upscale or level up, if you want to use your gaming terminology? And what would be, if we're going to do that, if let's say we are able to do that, what should they be focused on?
I have a tremendous respect for teachers who chose to be a teacher as their profession, because I mean it's I don't think it's just kind of a profession. I think it's a calling, because it has a tremendous impact on the students who are going to be the future leaders and the like, those who kind of form our future society. And they should be the role models. And I think it's to really fulfill that calling, they should be the role models in terms of like embracing the technology in a way that best fulfill that mission, and willing to learn what's available and out there. It's not easy, but I think that's what we expect all our students to do, and I think teachers should be kind of leading the way.
Right. What would that leadership look like? What would that way look like? If in fact you have an idea of what that should look like.
I think an individual teacher, I mean, they have to, I mean, there's a lot of resources out there available on the internet. I think it's just kind of studying what's available, what's possible, how things work, and how we can incorporate in everyday study and like and all that, and just kind of share their learnings with the students, and how and demonstrate how we cope with new emerging technology and how we kind of go about adopting it and deciding what to learn. And I think that demonstration is going to be very valuable, because the world is keep changing and evolving and at a faster pace than ever. And that adaptation is a critical skill that students have to also have to be equipped with. And at schools, kids learn from how teachers adapt to those environments by themselves.
Right. Okay. So I'm curious, how do you use AI in your daily life and in your work life? What are the ways in which you integrate it, and I guess the impact of that?
I mean, personally, I've been coding since I was 9, so I kind of I've been I've
Which coding really isn't that relevant at this point, right?
right, but then I'm just kind of used to develop simple tools that
Mm-hmm.
for me. So in my work, I mean, I think the sourcing, assessing, and kind of comparing different companies, and I think there are a lot of software that it can develop and make that process more comprehensive and efficient. So in my work, that I use a lot of software for that. And if there's something like a reminding and also like a managing my like kind of the memos and write-ups and etc. I just kind of make simple tools myself and for myself and use them.
Okay. And maybe the last question here, no promises, but when we think about the federal initiatives that are being pushed out and really trying to push AI, especially in, I think, K-12 education, where do you see, or how do you see that impacting, our public schools especially, but not necessarily just public schools?
So I don't know exactly what that order entails. So
Hmm.
I cannot say I have concerns until I have a better understanding of like what it is. But I've been always a strong advocate for teaching programming language to students because the world that they're going to be living in is there may be more machines speaking programming language than humans, right? So it's going to be very useful to be able to communicate with them how those machines think and where those recommendations and actions come from. So I think I think as long as the education is focused on helping them understand how like the mechanics of how things work, how they can make better if they want to, and have a clear understanding of like what are the limitations, then I think that's going to be very valuable.
Okay, well, that's maybe a good place to wrap it up. I want to give you an opportunity to share any links or things that you might want to share. And, I know you've got a couple books. I don't know if you have a website or a social media you want to share. And then also if there's anything else that you want to mention or that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about.
I mean, I think it's education is a very very important. I mean, as I said, I think I have a tremendous respect for all the teachers and schools and then role of education in raising our future workforce and future leaders. And I really appreciate your endeavor to how we can carefully integrate this new technology in our education system so that we raise well-prepared citizen to bring humanity forward in a positive direction. So yeah, I'm really happy to see that.
Okay. And any links you want to mention? Any resources, places you want people to go?
So like like the books and we have to learn more about our work. We have our PDP website with what we do in as how we kind of see the AI native company landscape.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to put those things in the show notes, and we'll just, I guess, keep an eye on the evolution of AI in education and elsewhere. So, Songyee, I appreciate the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
What we need to do is spend enough time together that we can start to translate our ideas into each other's language and include one another in this community of inquiry. And that is the work of love.